Champions Cup got up and running over the weekend, and although it wasn't the most memorable start to the competition, the Irish team still gave us plenty to talk about. Leinster's bench flexed its muscles in Bristol on Sunday evening to record a bonus point win to start their quest for a fifth star, while in Limerick on Saturday afternoon, Munster saw off a very ill-disciplined Stade Francais to also start with 5 points out of 5. Unfortunately, it wasn't a winning start for Ulster, who conceded 61 points to Toulouse in the south of France on Sunday afternoon. On tonight's episode of the Left Wing podcast, we will discuss all that and plenty more. I'm Will Slattery. I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Luke Fitzgerald. Luke, I ran through, I suppose, the Irish provinces there. What kind of stood out to you most out of the three teams this weekend?
What stood out to me most? Great question. I think, do you know what? Probably Prendergast, really, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah. I had probably cast some doubts around, his kind of physical capabilities. I think I'm wrong on that, by the looks of things. Again, like he certainly looks like he's got that top end pace. Certainly, I wasn't sure it was deceptive. I heard lots of people saying it was deceptive. It was deceptive.
Yeah.
It was good. So that was really great to see. A nice fend. Now, pretty weak defending, but a great fend all the same for one of those tries. So that was probably the most surprising thing out of the weekend action. I think the Ulster one, probably might have expected that one, did we? That was always going to be a tough enough one there. Stade, we weren't really sure away from home, like what they were going to do. The 2 red cards is not like it's not completely out of the realms.
It's not out of character at all. Yeah, if ever it was like in character.
The Ulster one, years ago, when you have the kind of eye gouging and all this kind of stuff. So they're kind of they're a bit of a known unknown quantity in the competition. And Bristol put up a decent fight against Leinster for periods, but also kind of shot themselves in the foot at different times, didn't they? So
let's keep with the Sam Prendergast thing. I think that's a lot of people came out of that game thinking the same thing. It's funny because I had the same thought as you. I'd seen him do some positive things, but I was kind of like a little curious about everyone hyping him up so much because I hadn't seen.
I hadn't seen it. I was I swear to God, I was doubting it a bit.
Neither had I.
Yeah,
because sometimes you're thinking like maybe not to judge an out half on X factor moments, judge the out half on how they manage the game. But for me, I kind of wanted to see some X factor to see if he had that, and I agree with you. That pace he showed for the 2 tries was very impressive to me. I hadn't seen that in any.
Pretty reassuring, Will, as well. Like if you have that pace, to me, what it says is you're a decent athlete, and if you're a decent athlete, it means that he's only going to get better. I think because he's still so young. So I thought that was really reassuring. Like, look, the mistakes, people are always going to be trying to pick them apart. I think the only way that they get eradicated or they get reduced is by playing more time there. The real fall guy in all this is Frawley, and he is now injured, I think. So yeah, that guy has just never been able to get a proper run of form, and he never moved when he should have moved club. So I don't know. It looks to me like that might be done and dusted at this stage. It sounds ridiculous.
It's funny. I think I tweeted earlier. 31 days ago, he came off the bench against the All Blacks with the game in the balance. It looked like this was his moment.
Crowley hadn't been playing great.
Crowley wasn't playing well. Yeah. Sam Prendergast was still a rookie at this stage. Yeah. He has a nightmare 20 minutes. Has to play full back off the bench. He gets dropped against Argentina, then gets shunted into full back against Fiji. Doesn't feature against Australia. Then plays full back again, gets injured. Jordie Barrett comes in, plays well. So where does he fit in now? It looks like the torch has already been passed at club level as well to Prendergast.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Sport is just unbelievable.
A month, what a month from hell for a guy.
And he was playing the best out of all the 10s before they went into camp. It just shows.
That seems like a season ago, doesn't it? That 4 or 5 match spell.
Couldn't agree with you more. Because I'm a bit I've been calling him as the guy for quite a long period of time. But in that period of time, I've also called for him to leave club, and he should have done that. I think he's going to pay for it now. And he's going to go back to that position now where he's the kind of Swiss Army knife and fills in where different guys are injured. And also, look, I feel really bad for the guy because seems like nearly every chance he's kind of got going, he seems to get a little niggly injury or an injury somewhere. So
the knocks.
Yeah, he's been very unlucky with those, So, very disappointed for him. Delighted for Prendergast. I was a little worried. I'm less worried now. I still think I saw a few tackling things that I wasn't.
Sliding in.
That should have been a red, I think.
Well, definitely a yellow. He didn't even get a card for it.
But is it so? Even the Deegan one, I always thought if you foot trip someone in rugby that it was a red card.
That's yellow. Foot trip is automatic yellow. I don't think it's red unless
It's kicking someone. Is that like?
it's never. It's always yellow.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a real.
Trying to get like.
I absolutely hate it. By the way.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the lowest things you can do in rugby. Actually, yeah. I think it's really sneaky. It's I always think the Neil Back, who I loved as a player, but I used to hate that. I used to hate when they were tripping people. Or Martin Williams, even who's the best guy ever. He loved a little foot trip as well. I just think it's the sneakiest one. And I hate people going into tackles with it too. It's my bugbear when people are going in for tries. I think it's the most cowardly thing when people slide tackle in there. Less so out in the pitch. But
Prendergast one, it was kind of like bizarre. I don't even know what
it's
he.
Like he lost
to
footing,
do.
or
Yeah.
he decided. I think it's like he changed his mind halfway through. I think it looked like he was going to go low, and then it's almost like he pulled out of it because the other guy was kind of lowering himself too. It looked like he changed his mind halfway through because it's like he left his feet. It was very weird.
It was kind of even like hard to like see it in real time. It was such a strange thing to see.
Quite bad technique, like, because
Very
he
bad.
needs to realise that he's a light guy. So if you're a light guy or you're lighter than most of the other people on the pitch, something I wouldn't say it now, but something I would have had to have dealt with, as a player, as a kind of one of the smaller players on the pitch, when I was playing. You lose if you go off your feet. It's body weight on body weight. Technique is your friend, and footwork, being close to the ground with your feet, is really important. The closer you are to contact, it's the same kind of concept as kind of boxing and things like that. If your feet are off the ground, you've got no power. It's body weight on body weight. Okay, for the bigger guys, I still don't advise it. It's not the right technique. So going off his feet there that far out was never going to be a good decision.
And then when you couple that with the Fiji game when he had that, could have been a red card when took the shoulder.
Just a little awkward, Will, I think. Would you say?
Yeah. And I suppose he's only 21. He's very new. That you'd presume can be eradicated.
Well, do you know what I would say to him? I think if I was advising him, or you're looking at a younger player, I think he should work on his technique with it, because if he's good at it, right, people are going to be targeting him to try and tire him out anyway, because it's, if they can tire him out, you're going to get more bad decisions out of him, worse technique, right? So you're going to have that to deal with anyway, but you just don't want people talking about a defensive thing with him, like he might put a high shot in, or, he's liable to miss one, whatever it is. Now is a really good time to bet in some really good technique. So if I was his coach, I'd be thinking, give him some, put the good technique into, put the time into the defence. It feels like it's not the most important thing, but it's actually really important for his career too, even for his tackling and his technique and keeping his body and his shoulders in good condition for later in his career. You think about Wilkinson had all those issues for the same reasons, even though you knew you were going to get belted going down his channel. You still wanted to tire him out with it, you know what I mean? So he's going to have to deal with that. I think it's a good time for him now to go, okay, hang on, I've had a few messy bits here. Let's really nail down really good tackle technique for this early in my career. He's still good enough to do that. And it looks like he actually doesn't mind the physical stuff. I was worried about that. There's a few things where I saw a few handy bits and a few things that I don't love, but I've seen enough that I know, he looks like a competitor. He looks like he believes in himself. He actually is big enough that he can put on a good frame over the next couple of years. If he can couple that with good technique, I think he lines himself up for a long career. Yeah,
but it'll be interesting in the short term how he goes with that, because there's a huge block of matches now coming up. They have Claremont on Saturday, then they have Connacht and they have Munster, followed up by La Rochelle and Bath. They're huge matches, and it looks like he's going to be given the starting jersey. It's funny, that you mentioned there was kind of back and forth between Frawley and the Byrne brothers, and now Prendergast has just come out and taken over from all of them. So I'd love to know what they all think now, and what do they regret some decisions they made? Maybe not Ross Byrne, because he was obviously starting in these finals and stuff like that.
Ross Byrne is that's another funny one. He's gone from basically not having a great final, and basically to being completely out of the conversation. He was a guy who was a closer, considered a closer. You think about the Australia match last year, or was it a year and a half ago?
It was 2022.
It was 2022.
Yeah.
Sorry, he finished that, because I think, was that the last game of, correct me if I'm wrong, was that the last game of that window? He kind of came out of that window, having got that kick and won the game.
He got into the Six Nations squad.
Exactly. And then obviously he's gone all the way through, great did very well with Leinster all the way through the competition, was good enough to do the business. And then in the final comes unstuck with a kind of not a great performance. Didn't have a great one the year before, but I don't think they were all his fault. Last year it was probably more evident just because you need a bit of pace. And Frawley had that bit of impetus when he came on.
Get a third crack at it.
No, but
Two finals is ample.
Okay, so to me it feels like the reason I'm going in a roundabout way is you talk about Frawley being back in the pecking order. Like, how far back is Ross Byrne now? Like, from being the guy just behind Crowley for he probably would have been in there for Six Nations last year. You know, I'd say he was definitely in there.
And even I watched a Leinster A Munster A stream like 2 weeks ago. It was a Friday evening. It was freezing cold weather, and Harry Byrne was playing in Lakelands like for Leinster A. Like, you know, he played in the Six Nations last year against Italy, and now he's playing for Leinster A.
But do you think so?
With a scratch team of teenagers.
But I was thinking about my own head. Like, it sounds like in your head too, you're kind of like, well, that's not even a conversation now.
Oh yeah, you're playing in Lakelands on a Friday night in front of a handful of people. Like,
oh, well, sorry, I'm not even talking about Harry. I'm more talking about Ross.
Like, I just think. Well, there was reports in various French media that like Montpellier were circling, you know, for Ross maybe at the end of this season. Like, he just seemed like a guy who'd be pretty well suited to the top 14. That kind of steady style, like the way they play, like
big heavy guys though.
Yeah, I know, but I think he'd actually be. You know, he's a pretty good goal kicker. Like, I think,
crossfield kicking, like, nice distributor.
The French league is pretty. It's
brutal,
not a well.
It's pretty brutal though.
No, it is.
A lot of games like.
If Joey Carberry's able.
Well, we'll see. Yeah.
He picked up an injury.
Yeah, but I think lots of people do. They probably played about 15 games so far. You know what I mean? Like, our lads are only just getting started. So, look, it's such an interesting debate, and I'm so pleased that someone has kind of reared the head in Leinster. It looks like the guy now, provided he doesn't get an injury, so hopefully he stays injury free. Bit gooder for Frawley, a bit gooder for Ross. Harry, I think, has been back in my mind for quite a while, I think, but and needs to go because he is a very good player, but he just needs to play. But poor Ross, like, I don't even know where he is in the conversation now. I think he's quite a bit away. But look, a bad injury and everyone's back in the game, isn't it? So you see how quickly it's gone for Frawley.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see, as I said, how the next couple of weeks go in some of those big games. I'm expecting Sam Prendergast to play. Like, we're really hoping we get Prendergast versus Crowley now.
Yeah, it'd be great.
In Thomond Park over Christmas. But the Prendergast thing was one piece of kind of intrigue. Jordie Barrett, obviously people wanted to see how he would go. He slotted in. I suppose, what else would you expect? He's an unbelievable player, but he did look like right away.
He looked like a really. Do you know what? Without doing like anything like unbelievable, like there was one pass he threw. Now it wasn't a great decision to throw the giant pass, but it was about 35 meters. It was a huge pass. Do you remember the one off the left to right to Gary? I think we went to Gary Ringrose in the end. Now it wasn't right, like. It was nothing on, but I was just thinking, wow, like it was a huge distance to throw a pass. But he just looked so composed out there. He was physical. Every decision he made, he looked. You know what he looked like? It looked like a really seasoned, top class international playing a game where, it was not unbelievably bad conditions, but not great conditions. Team was playing okay. But he just came on and everything he did was just the right decision, was executed perfectly, and he didn't need to do anything magic. Even the try, just a lovely bit of show and go, very physical.
Through the middle.
Yeah, but his tackling was really good. He just was really tidy, wasn't he? And I was like, yeah, he's top class, isn't he? And like, the thing is, what it told me is that I think they're just going to try and fit him in. And I think he can play anywhere now. I think the natural place is probably at 12, and he's probably a lovely bit to have next to Henshaw and next to Prendergast if he's there, and even Frawley if he's there, because he's such a big guy too. But I think Ringrose, because he's such a good player, he can play on the right.
On the wing.
He's the guy who loses out to me.
But is that him losing out? Like, do you want to like?
He is. Because what it does for him now, it impacts him coming into Six Nations. I think for that 13 berth, because he's the most natural there. But Robbie was the best of all the centres, I thought, in November. I don't know what you thought.
I thought he was really good. Is it the best use of the resources to go? Barrett, Henshaw, and Ringrose in the wing. Is that the best use of it? Like, is putting?
I'd rather Gary played than didn't.
Yeah, because it's funny, because going into the weekend, I was wondering, is Barrett his best use in a roundabout way 23? But no, after the weekend, I'm like, no, he's too good.
He's playing,
way too good.
Playing, yeah.
I'm just like, is the balance of the team better? Excuse me, with an actual out and out winger and having like Gary Ringrose as 23 seems.
That's straight. Yeah, stop that right now. What you're about to say. He's too good.
People always throw out Gary Ringrose in the wing. He hasn't played a huge amount there, so I think this weekend I'll be fascinated now if he plays against Claremont at home, which is kind of a good way to ease into maybe a few tougher tests to come. Like, because we haven't seen a huge amount of him on the wing. I know he's played there sporadically for Leinster.
He's got lovely skills.
Yeah, no, I know.
He doesn't get to show as much in the centre because he's so little time there. And I don't think he's an unbelievable ball player. Nor do I think Robbie is. I think they're both lovely passing, like nice skills. But like their best facet is their physical nature, you know what I mean? And they play their best when they have, well, I think they play their best when they've got a ball playing 15 and 2 ball playing wingers, because I think they provide so much going forward. And their first option in my mind with the pair of them is always to kind of dominate contact, use footwork, use their strength, they're both really fit guys too. And I think they're thinking about offloads rather than passing pre-contact, and I think that's how they're best utilised. Alongside kind of Aki, who probably is nearly the best ball player of all of them in terms of short passing, I think, weirdly. But yeah, I think it's not the Henshaw, or sorry, Ringrose to me needs to be playing though, because he's like one of your best players.
Does Keenan being injured with the wrist injury, Frawley having his back tweaked, does Barrett go to 15 where he's played a lot of rugby? Does that make sense in the short term while Keenan is away? Like, the alternative is to put Jimmy O'Brien to fullback where he's played, but he struggled there. I think was it at Ravenhill towards the end of last season when Leinster.
You're rough enough to say there, I think.
So I'm thinking, does it make sense actually to put Barrett to 15 and go Henshaw and Ringrose in the centre at the moment when Keenan?
Well, maybe it gives you the most balance. Like, it's like you're kind of, it feels like you're moving one position rather than moving two guys in two positions.
Because then you have at the moment Jimmy O'Brien the left wing, Larmer the right wing, because Lowe is also injured.
But you've got a cannon of a boot at 15. Yeah. You've got the big passing game there too. He's a big guy, so he's good in the air.
That makes sense to me now.
It probably does, really. Yeah, but it depends. Like, I mean, is Osborne completely gone? Is that a long term?
Yeah, he's not going to be back for a while.
Is he not back for a while? I didn't know how serious that was. Yeah, I'd love to see where he would have kind of fit in on all this.
Yeah, it looks like himself, Lowe, and Keenan will be out, I would say, potentially for the rest of this window. I don't know if they'll play again before the Six Nations.
Oh, you're kidding me, really?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Just like reading
Keenan, I hope
parsing the Leinster injury reports, which don't have much information, but I'm gleaning.
Maybe I shouldn't say. I kind of saw him when I saw him. I was out with a few old Leinster colleagues out in the top of Dawson Street.
Lads.
Yeah, and we did pass him by. He looked like he had a
arm in a sling.
Not in a sling, but in a cast either, like a little, almost like a more serious version of like a GAA kind of, the hurling kind of.
Well, they said a few weeks, so like that's
maybe it's a strained wrist rather than a broken wrist or something.
I'd say
maybe it could be just a light break, maybe, and he's just something. But anyway, it looked to me like he's not. You're right, maybe on that. Maybe he gets back just before Six Nations, but maybe not.
But then I'm thinking, is Barrett at 15 the best option for Leinster? Because like you saw the way the weekend went, like La Rochelle looking very, very good on Friday night, beating Bath. Obviously, the conditions were like made it a bit of a strange game in some ways, but it was a statement of intent. Like Leinster, La Rochelle in January will probably decide who tops that pool.
Yeah.
So you're kind of thinking, I'm kind of almost treating the next few weeks like they're kind of positioning their team for that big one. Like, what's the best balance of that team with these options that they have?
I think Barrett is kind of he's an excellent fullback, first of all.
He's a great 12.
But he's an excellent 12, but he's an excellent fullback too.
Yeah. Like he broke through as a 15 first.
Yeah, and he's a very physical guy. He's played a bit in the wing too. Like, he can probably play pretty much anywhere. He's got lovely skills. He just looks like a good fit for. Doesn't he look like a good guy? Did you hear him speak after?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I just think he looks like a good fella.
The Barretts seem like a very real.
They do, don't they? They seem like good chaps, actually. Yeah. So I think, and Teak tough. Like really tough guys too. So like I'd imagine they were kicking the crap out of each other growing up. I can only imagine. But like they seem like a good bunch. He looks like a really good bit of business. I think fullback is probably fullback maybe makes the best use of what you need out of him. And what
at the moment with Keenan out anyway.
Well, certainly with Keenan out. Yeah.
When he comes back, then I know
Keenan's in a world. Keenan's very close to being a world 15.
That's why the argument is: is this a time to maybe try Ringrose in the wing and that option for when Keenan does come back? Because you don't want to have to try that later in the year without any seasoning.
But then you're pushing Henshaw to 13, which is not like sorry.
Let's keep going.
Yeah, we're pushing Henshaw to 13. Which is not a massive change for him, but I think 12 he's still at 12.
It's just is there a danger that in trying to get everyone on the pitch at the same time, you kind of imbalance the team basically?
Well, I just feel like all those guys are such complete players. I don't know if you really lose out either way.
Yeah.
I would think maybe it moves less people around. Like Henshaw to me is still his best position is probably 12, and it doesn't really matter where you put Barrett really. Like
another question of a similar vein. R.G. Snyman, obviously huge impact. He's such an impactful player. Rod actually texted me and asked me, have you changed your opinion on R.G. Snyman being the standard second row?
I have.
You're thinking?
I think I probably have. Yeah. Like I think Rhodes was right on that one. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe I just didn't see enough of him.
He's always been kind of battling injuries, and South Africa have decided to use him in a smaller role. But the more I see him play, the more I'm like, he's absolutely unbelievable. He's
well, maybe I still, do you know what? To my mind, he's probably still like Etzebeth is my guy. Like if I'm picking one guy out of every
dog of war.
Well, he is a dog of war, but he's also an unbelievable athlete as well. He's like, and he's freaky strong, and he's freaky fast, and he just has an unbelievable engine. If I'm picking a second row tomorrow, it's Etzebeth. So when he says he's the best in the world, I don't think it's even close. Sorry, he is brilliant though. He is brilliant.
And like, so how do you think Leinster will pick their second rows? They have Joe McCarthy, James Ryan, Snyman. For me, Snyman has to start.
I think he does, but he gives you an extra dimension on the line out too.
I think I think Ryan and Snyman maybe is the best balance, because then you still have McCarthy bringing that powerful impact off the bench. Like leaving a guy like that on the bench, obviously. It's tough for him, but
I think they'll feel the balance is a little bit better with Ryan McCarthy.
With starting.
That's what I think they will do, even though I think that that's probably wrong. Although Ryan to me has probably gone a little bit that way. Like I think Ryan seems to be nearly like, I think he's nearly in the numbers. You know, when he broke through originally, he kind of had some lovely eye-catching kind of ball play and things like that. Do you remember to my mind, I'm thinking the Heineken Cup where the inside passes, like you know, and
so long ago now,
it does seem long, like, and he's had a lot of injuries and stuff since, but he's like really neat and tight. I
forgot about that, yeah.
His like and I think he's kind of a different player now. He's super physical now. Like remember there was probably some questions about him before that Lions tour where he probably should have got selected. Now he had a few bad injury run into it, but he was brilliant the year before. I think he's gotten unbelievably physical now as well. So he's kind of similar enough to McCarthy. So the question is, I don't know. Or sorry, the answer is I don't 100% know. My sense is they might feel McCarthy is probably still more in that vein, and what you get with Snyman is probably the all singing, all dancing kind of version.
Even him catching the ball at a line out is like a joy to watch. His one hand up in the air. It's like he turns it like a terrible throw into a guaranteed.
He's so good in
ball.
open play, Will. Like that's the thing with me. Like I know he forces a few offloads, but Leinster look like because they've got to play with him a bit more in fairness than the Munster guys. Leinster probably going forward a little bit more. You got a few more threats like Doris and that who are very impactful around the pitch. Conan, these guys, and when you think about Sheehan coming back in, and they didn't even play Furlong, or they don't have Furlong available, but Porter only came on the pitch. Like I think they have more threat around him, so I think he'll be more effective, and I think what they'll get to see is probably more that all court play where he's getting the hands free and people are like really starting to read where they should be thinking about taking up space around him. Do you know you have players around you, like Nathan Hines was a bit like that, but just not.
He did actually offload.
Probably not as powerful though, but you always knew the ball was coming back with Hinesy. He's not as quick or anything like that, but like super strong guy, could always dominate the contact, get the hands around, hold it in one hand. So you knew it was coming out, and you kind of started reading him. The more you play with him, the more you're like, right, you start anticipating, oh, there's a gap there, or looks like we're dominating here, or even if it's not, expect the ball. Do you know that kind of way? So I think they'll get better with him, and if he stays fit, like the key thing with him is, can he stay fit? Isn't it really?
Well, he's played. He's been like an ever present so far this season.
Yeah, he looks great.
He's probably played more rugby to start this year than he has. God, certainly since he came to Munster, and before that he was in Japan, so he's pretty lightly raced there. So you're probably going back 7-8 years to when he was with the Bulls. So the last time he had like a sustained run of club rugby the way he's had this year, and he obviously played in November for South Africa too. So if I would be Leinster, I'd be reasonably confident on his durability thus far. Obviously they'll be crossing their fingers on that, but I'm already looking forward to like Skelton, Snyman.
It's such a nice balance for that. Now I think Skelton is still a freak.
Yeah.
Snyman is probably 1-2, just maybe not as physical, but he's got kind of, he's just a little bit more polished, isn't he, in terms of the other parts of the game. But I think he's well able. He's a big enough guy that he'll be able to compete a bit with Skelton. And in fairness to Ryan, whatever you say about him, he competed very well with Skelton last year, as did Joe McCarthy. And in the final that they lost at home, Ryan going off was still the key moment in the game for me. Like once it all fell apart when kind of Ryan left the pitch, because it was one of the best. I think it was one of the best 25 minutes I've ever seen on a pitch from a lock. I really feel like I'm not overstating that. It was unbelievable.
He absolutely emptied Skelton in one tackle.
Oh, but in a few tackles, Will. Yeah, there was one.
It could have been actually around when he got injured. I think he got a knee.
The head followed through on the next person.
They're actually very unlucky as well.
It was. So look, regardless of who you put on there, I think you've got some real quality and power in there.
Two questions before I move on to Munster. The first one is, I know the team selection at the weekend was dictated to a degree by Ireland playing the week before, so guys had played like 4 weeks in a row, because it was such a strong bench. And it was like, I've seen a lot of reports, the bench coming on, the Galacticos coming on, the bomb squad, but I'm like, did no one watch the first half? Like the starting team were playing terribly. And I think back to the Champions Cup final team selection when I thought it was a mistake to keep Van der Fleer in reserve when he's an 80-minute man for me. Yeah. I'm like, how will Leinster select their team? Like, are Leinster and Neen Aber, I'm thinking chiefly here.
Oh, I know where you're going now. Sorry,
I want to keep these guys, or a lot of these guys.
South African kind of way.
Yeah, I think that'd be a mistake because I think Leinster actually, their undoing in that final to a degree was they didn't make the first half pay when they had a lot of cachet in the game. And with Van der Fleer on the bench and they had James Ryan on the bench as well, I'm like, I think they're better off. It's, for me, again, to reiterate, I think it's only a bomb squad if you have an equally strong starting team. I don't think it's a bomb squad if your starting team is a good bit weaker because you're keeping these guys in reserve. So I'll be keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, and I think that's right because like they seem to be wed to this kind of thinking about it, whereas it nearly cost them the World Cup. If you're being, if you're looking at it with a cold eye, their decisions around the 10 slot nearly cost them. It really nearly cost them, because they were using this thing where they're kind of keeping the best guys. Now, Pollard was injured, I know, but even regardless,
it's like problems at 10, Leo comes like, hold my beer. I've been there myself.
Yeah, but sorry, the point is that you can't be too wed to that. I think Leinster will have, regardless of who they have, they'll have a strong bench, but you've got to match fire with fire at the start of the game. You've got to pulverise teams with the best that you got. You really have to put yourself, because even if you don't feel the pay of that, in that period of the game where the scoreline might be a little bit tighter, you're softening up the team for the end of the game because they can't compete. And most people, there's only two teams really who can compete with Leinster from the bench. Probably really one. I'd say Toulouse are the only team that you're kind of going, well, they probably have a brilliant bench too, same as Leinster have, But everyone else, even La Rochelle, probably don't have the same strength and depth, I don't think, on the bench. Will, I don't know if you agree. I think it's close, but I still think Leinster have an edge there. And I think, to go back, I just hope that they don't start doing that. I think you need to pick your best team at the start of it. You have to give them a chance to play 80 minutes. You have to give your best players a chance to play 80 minutes.
Especially because the point is, like, Leinster will have a strong bench, or quite a strong bench, regardless of, if they go with their strongest team. For me, like, holding a guy like Van der Fleer in reserve, I know, to be fair,
you have to give him 80 minutes. He's playing brilliantly.
At the moment, he's playing even better. But, like, even back then, I said it the Tuesday before the final on the Saturday, I thought it was a mistake to not.
The other way of looking at it, Will, is the thing. You can't reduce your best player's opportunity to impact the game in terms of minutes. You want to give them as many minutes as possible to impact the game. Now, if they're fading, you take them off. That's fine. But if they're not, like, Van der Fleer needs to be on the pitch for me as long as possible. As long as he's not, if you see the numbers dropping off dramatically, that's fine. Take it off. Use the good guy you have. But you give the guy the chance to play 80 because he's making magical plays. He could be the first minute, but it could be the last. Plays that other people can't make. It'd be like holding Doris off for me. It'd be like holding, like, even Snyman, I think, has to start.
That's the one who I'm thinking of here. Because McCarthy and Ryan played a lot of minutes in November and Snyman was still on the bench. So I'll be very intrigued to see if they're because that's how they use him at the Springboks. They use him predominantly as a bench.
They've got Etzebeth.
I know they have Etzebeth. Yeah. But like Ryan and McCarthy are pretty well established guys too, and like Etzebeth is one second row. He doesn't play both positions. Like, so there isn't.
I'm drawing a blank on the other guy, but he's class.
Mostert plays a lot. Mostert plays a lot. Mostert's class, but look. So it's just I wanted to mention that as a watch this space, because I thought it was maybe a little mistake. Because to be fair to Neen Aber, he's had great success doing it that way. They won 2 World Cups. So if he comes in and says like, Leo, I think we should select our team like this, I don't think Leo's going to be like, no, you're completely wrong on that, because he's like, look, I won 2 World Cups.
This is the interesting thing. Like, I thought the World Cup in France was like, I thought they nearly blew that, and I thought they should have won the World Cup. They were the best team there. They should win the World Cup. And I thought the way they selected the team, they nearly cost them. Like, it was so the one before, I'm thinking, okay, brilliant effort. Like, that was really, really good. But this one, I thought they kind of crawled over the line nearly in every game. Like, bar the French one was very impressive, but even still, like, that was probably a little bit tighter than it needed to be too. So, I don't know. I have a different tilt on that second World Cup. No, not to scoff at it, like as if me, an Irish person, but like, they had the best team in both tournaments, I think, and I don't know. I hope he's not going back to that mentality. I hope he's nearly. I feel like my big worry with him is that he hasn't learned anything from that World Cup, where I think he thinks that the coaches did an unbelievable job. I don't think they did. I think they nearly cost that brilliant team a World Cup. personal opinion.
Yeah,
Thought they nearly cost him against England.
It's a pity our friend Rudd isn't here, because he's like very much like was a fan of the cutting, what the kind of the process and the kind of interesting things the coaches did. But I lean more towards you, that I thought they maybe won in spite of some of their selection decisions.
The hooker decisions, bringing on the nines, like the 10 situation.
Maybe, they picked 4 scrum halves and 2 hookers in the World Cup squad. But look, they won the World Cup, so yeah, that's why I'm saying I'm not dismissing it outright. I just don't think it's the right decision, and I said I'll be keeping an eye on the team selections and what way they try to stack the bench. We'll move on to Munster now. We mentioned earlier that Stad got 2 second rows sent off in 2 minutes in the second half. One with a flying kind of JBL style clothesline, and one with like kind of a jackknife power bomb.
So stupid, like. Yeah. I thought, particularly the second one.
The second one, is in
madness.
What is
what are you doing?
Yeah, even though Casey didn't land, I was reading an article earlier arguing that it shouldn't have been a red card because he didn't land on his, on his head. But I'm like, that's just such a dangerous, always illegal,
weird,
absurd tackle.
Like wrestling. It was like watching wrestling. Yeah. Like the tombstone was nearly going down.
So
I don't know. It was very unusual behavior. But not unbelievably unsurprising from Stad.
Yeah, so Munster get the bonus point win, which, you look at it in paper and say, well, look, they had a second string Stad team and they got 2 men sent off. But Bayonne was their first game last year. Bayonne came with a B team and they didn't beat them. So just to get the 5 points is just a good thing first and foremost. But there's 3 guys in particular I'd like to talk to you about off the back of it. Jack Crowley, first and foremost. I thought he played really, really well. And he's a guy not to Frawley's level, but he came into the November Internationals as a starting out half. Kind of got taken off a little early against New Zealand. Responded, I thought, with a very good first half performance against Argentina. Then obviously Prendergast comes in. He comes off the bench against Australia and has a nice impact, kind of tees up the winning try with a rubber kick. I thought he responded again very, very well on Saturday. And, we've been looking at it as in kind of a bit of uncertainty at 10 could be a negative, but it looks like he's responded well in the last 2 games anyway.
Yeah, and we've always got to remember as well, I don't think he's got the same trip that the Leinster guys will have in terms of it'll be more challenging for him to be effective week in, week out. And he's got his game. He's got to be tighter with his game. He can't have those kind of loose moments because he's probably not going to get away with it with Munster, just in terms of where both teams are in their evolution. Leinster looking like, I don't know if they're favourites because Toulouse are pretty strong on the weekend, and so were La Rochelle, but I probably still have them as favourites, because they had Leinster had a very messy first half and very ill-disciplined. But still won comfortably. I just don't think he's going to have that. So I thought it was really brilliant. It was a brilliant performance. I thought he put Stad to the sword, and made a lot of good decisions.
Some of his kicks were really nice. I thought
really, really nice. Yeah.
Weighted grubbers
and they were kind of good. They were good, sensible kicks as well, weren't they? Will, I thought they were good times. He looked like a mature 10 to me. I think it'll be a great competition between himself and Prendergast. It looks like at this stage, provided they both stay injury free. And I thought it was great that Munster, he looks like a guy Munster can rely on. He's growing into that role. I think he'll become a leader in there. Important considering probably, Pete and Connor now. I don't know if their situation now changes a little bit with Roundtree going. And, they seemed to be kind of trying to push those guys out the door last year, didn't they? The way they treated the contract situation. So, but they are still towards the latter end of their careers. So it's good to see someone else emerging alongside kind of the likes of Byrne and that. And I thought he just looked like the adult in the room a bit, didn't he? He looked very good.
Well, that's what I was impressed by, because he had a poor start to the season, which obviously.
Team was struggling.
Yeah, I was going to say, team struggling.
Which is kind of what I'm trying to contextualize.
Roundtree leaves, and then he has to knock back at international level. You're thinking, oh, will his confidence be dented? Will he but he actually came out and it was the opposite. He seemed to kind of have a point to prove or kind of bounce back from that, which was impressive.
Yeah, you like to see that in a player, clearly believes in himself, clearly, thinks that he should be in that position. I loved the interview he gave. It was a terrible interview, but it was a brilliant interview.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I think it was an off the ball. I don't know where he was promoting something or whatever, but they were asking him about the 10 position. He was like, "Oh no, it's good for the team, and it wasn't about me." And he kind of just a real sensible answer. We all know, what he thinks. Do you know what I mean? He's a human being. He'd have been really disappointed he wasn't starting, but he reacted really well whenever he came on, made an impact. Gave the sensible interview, didn't ignite any kind of chatter about someone being unrest in the camp and all that kind of stuff. So he stays in Farrell's good graces and Easterby's kind of team now that's in situ, who'll have some difficult decisions to make around that. And he makes it easy to be brought back in. Do you know that kind of way? Like, he hasn't given you a reason to go, this fecker now going out and putting pressure on me in the media. He was really sensible with his answers, even if they were complete lies. So, no, I'm really pleased with him. I think he's still a great player in my eyes, and I think he'll get better and better. He's still a very young guy too, so that was good to see.
And there's so much interesting rugby over the next 6 weeks before the Six Nations comes back in. Like, there's so many good opportunities for Crowley.
Head to head. Do you hope they give the head to head? I'd love to see that old fashioned kind of Leinster or Irish trial.
But even outside of that, say, like, that's obviously going to be the one. But, like, you know, they go to Cass on Friday night. They have a really good opportunity to top this pool. Like, there's a lot of good teams in it, but with the fixture list people have, there's no obvious team that's going to run the table with 4 out of 4. So then they play Saracens and Thomond Park in the new year. They go away to Northampton again after doing it last year too. So there's some great opportunities to go head to head with some good out halves. So I'll be watching that closely. You mentioned Peter O'Mahony there. Thought he was brilliant at the weekend.
Unbelievable.
Like, this is this.
He's got lovely skills, hasn't he?
That moment.
It's always surprising. It looks kind of awkward because I think for a guy, he's got an unbelievable leap. Will you want to see him in the gym? Like, he was always, we do this kind of counter movement jumps, but he was always nearly the top in the counter movement. He's got an unbelievable spring and kind of power, but he plants the feet kind of heavy. Do you ever notice that with him? Like when he runs or whatever, when he's changing direction. But his passing looks a bit like kind of rigid. But
that was off his bad hand back inside. That was
gorgeous pass. It was a 15-metre one at full pace.
Off his bad hand, and he got a clothesline from hell for his troubles at the end of it.
Seriously, no, he reacted well to that. Yeah. So no, look, I was really pleased for him. I think that would have been a tough enough November too. Like, lots of people were kind of giving the bench a lot of stick in the New Zealand game for not making any impact, you know, and I think that was probably a little bit unfair. Now they didn't, but the team was not playing well, you know.
For me, I at this point of his career, I really separate the impact he has and could have for Ireland with what he does with Munster. For me, his Ireland days are numbered. I don't think he has maybe enough left in the tank to really impact international rugby, but he's still a really good club player for Munster. So I hope he doesn't think, because in his mind, because I'm kind of done with Ireland, it's a natural end of my career. I'd love to see him play another year for Munster only, if that's what.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know what you're saying. Yeah,
say at the weekend. I made a point last week in the podcast. Ireland didn't steal a single opposition line out in November. He's so good at that again at the weekend. Like, his leap that you mentioned there. You know, you saw him getting, you know, the scrapes on his face, the blood, you know, after when he gets in. Like, he still has so much to offer this Munster team in a period of transition that I don't know. I think there's a good chance he retires at the end of the season from all rugby. But I think even if he's not going to be involved with Ireland massively, I think he still has huge value for Munster.
Oh, that's right. That's undoubted.
Yeah, so
I think during a period when you're trying to pick a coach, or you're trying to settle in the current guys that are there, if they decide to go that direction, he would be valuable, really valuable there. You know, so no, I agree with you. I hope he doesn't, because like there's still plenty to be achieved in Munster, and also there's probably not many jobs that pay as well as professional rugby player. So and I think I'd say he's really nice for Byrne to have there too, you know, because it takes a little bit of pressure off him and a kind of new job there for a guy who's like, he's kind of so like, Byrne to me is probably one of the, if he's not the best player in the league, he's bloody close. Like, what he does for Munster, like, unbelievable player. And sorry, even Scarlets before that, like, he's an unbelievable player, Byrne. I think we just become used to kind of some of his kind of play. We kind of maybe don't talk about it as much, but it's unbelievable. Like, some of the turnovers and the play around the pitch, like, incredible. But yeah, no, to circle back, on the O'Mahony thing. Really pleased for him. I think that was a tough November for him. Yeah, he's one of the good ones. I really like Pete, actually. It's good to see him do well.
Yeah, he's one of those great characters. As I said, like, when he emerged from that kind of melee with, like, kind of blood in his face, and he was
gets the crowd going, doesn't he?
100%.
He need a bit of that with Zebo gone too. Zebo was the other guy who got the crowd.
He is one of those iconic Munster players, like a throwback. He would be completely in place with that team and, like, the noughties, that, you know, with Mick Galway and those, Peter Closty. Like, he would fit in with those characters.
He would.
Has that kind of physicality and that kind of because he's not, like, I suppose, the most, you know, gregarious speaker, but he has this kind of charisma of his presence almost.
He's a bit of Roy Keane about him, isn't he? He's a bit of an angry head in him when he's doing interviews, which I quite like, you know what I mean? He gives a good interview, I think, and he gets to coin the Ron Burgundy expression, he gets the people going. He does get the people going, and I think that's important then there, you know?
I think he's going to be 36 at the start of next season, which obviously seems old to be a back row. But say if he's no longer playing for Ireland, think about the time he could rest his body then in November, the time he could rest his body in the Six Nations window and really give Munster a huge whack. Because, as I said, in November, I did think he struggled to make an impact. And say in that game at Twickenham when he struggled a bit to make an impact, he got dropped in the summer in South Africa.
The question is whether he's a bench guy. See, I don't know if he is, but like, is he definitely not a starter?
I don't think so anymore.
Really?
I don't.
But like our line out, like it's a very different line out without him there.
That's 100% an argument. Like that, from that point of view, I can see the argument. But I just think his international window has maybe closed a bit.
Well, because he's not making the next World Cup, you think?
Yeah.
Is that your defining factor?
Well,
for
not
it,
the defining factor. I just think the impact he makes is not as great as some other options, to be on the bench in that role. But I still think he has a lot to offer Munster.
Well, I might pick him. So weirdly enough, given what I just said about Tyke Byrne, I might pick Pete ahead of him on the bench. Or sorry, at 6 to start.
I don't.
Now, I would never leave Byrne out of the team.
No,
he's definitely in one of my row, but I think he's a second row. I don't think he's a 6th international. I think he could play 6 for Munster.
I think Ireland have too many options there now. That I think. Look, is
he better than Baird? He's better than Baird to me at the moment.
Well, Baird's
had an injury.
Yeah,
but like he's not starting for Leinster. Conan, they're just a different type of player. And Conan's definitely an 8 though. Really, to my mind, like it's whether you're like.
But Conan gives great bench impact. Like
this is what I was just going to say. Conan's definitely like. I don't think they're going to play Doris at 6 because I just think it reduces his impact and he's so important to the team. But Conan's brilliant there too. He's great to have coming off the bench. So yeah, he can be a bench player. Is my mind.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at a likely back row of Byrne, Van der Fleer, Doris, and Conan as the back row substitute. To me, makes the most sense with the resources.
And you're thinking definitely Byrne at 6 rather than someone on the bench. I'm
not thinking definitely, but I'm thinking possibly. And I just don't think.
What about Izuchuku there?
He'd need to play a bit more. Like we'll come on to that in a few minutes. That I think it was a major mistake not to have him in the starting team against Toulouse at the weekend.
Clearly weren't allowed, though, I'd say.
But he barely played in November. Like Nick Timoney didn't play a single minute in November. He was on the bench.
But has he played a lot before?
Shuku played one game in November. Rob Herring was a bench player in November, as was Ian Henderson. I think Ian Henderson maybe got one start. So I just thought the Ulster team selection
might have been hampered though. Do you think that was fair? Or no, you think it was definitely like.
I just don't see what like. I don't see how could they forbid him from starting Nick Timoney when he.
Maybe they never got a week like this. So they never got a day, even if they trained all the way up, all the way through. Will, do you know like those guys were part of kind of 26s, weren't they?
You don't get to play a minute in November. You're playing Toulouse. Surely, like if.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Management gone mad, like
maybe, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Sorry,
I actually didn't consider that it could be an edict. I don't see how it could be because those guys
training minutes doesn't.
Is that a consideration if you're holding a tackle bag for a month that you can't play a match?
Sorry, I don't know. Is the honest answer. I'm trying to figure out a reason because it feels odd that they were on the bench.
It always seemed for me. It seemed like Richie Murphy was looking at Bordeaux this weekend at home as a game that they could win, and this Toulouse game, even with their strongest team, they wouldn't have won. But the difference between scoring 3 tries, which they did, and getting 4 and a bonus point, which could be valuable later in the competition, I think is worth going after.
Yeah, it's a fair point, yeah. And I don't know the answer to that. Like, I think he's operating with less resources there, though. So, like, I find it, I think if he's doing that and he's operating in a kind of targeted way.
Because McCluskey started, so they're obviously. And he played.
McCluskey was a little bit had a few injuries though. He didn't play all the rugby before the window. I think if memory serves. I don't think so. There could have been a bit of that. I'm only speculating. I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And remember, didn't Izuchuku play some emerging Ireland rugby too? So maybe there's a bit of that into consideration too. So like I don't know. I'm trying to figure out reasons why. Look, I think Richie's operating with less resources there at the moment. They're under pressure. Home match, a big performance there, unleashing the lads for that one. There's more at play there. Like they need a good crowd. Like everyone's expecting the loss in Toulouse, which is what transpired, right? And I know they could have nicked a bonus point, but next week a big performance in Ravenhill. Get the crowd behind you. There's a bit of that going on there. Well, they want to get a bit of that going. They need a big performance at home. They've been a bit patchy there, here and there this season, haven't they? I could see a bit of that impacting the decision. Is what I'm kind of saying. That's
what I'm assuming. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It was made with.
Well, I'm agreeing with you. I think in that respect.
In mind. I just don't really understand it. As I said, considering the guys played so little in November, like Nick Timoney has been probably their standout player.
Yeah.
And he didn't play in November.
But I would
just
assume
don't
also,
see it.
but his target is probably to play well in the home games. Kind of what the French team do. But I think the league is what he needs. Like Richie needs a big league campaign. He doesn't need he doesn't need to be dragged into quarterfinals and things like that of a Champions Cup that he can't win.
That is like, yeah,
If you're being really pragmatic, an Ulster supporter would hate to hear me say that, but if you're being pragmatic about it, the league is where they live now for the next year or two.
And especially when you're looking at their fixture list, you know what I'm saying? So they had Toulouse away, which they weren't going to win, Bordeaux home, then they have Munster, and then they have, I think, Connacht, and then they go back into 2 more European games. So like the 2 league games are probably the most crucial of those.
They're massively crucial.
Bordeaux, and then they have Exeter at
and
home.
Bordeaux at home gives you a big lift because they're a good team. If you beat them at home, which they're very capable of beating them at home, if the weather's crap, that even helps them a bit further. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think that it might be the real sensible play, Will, because I'd say he's not going to give. I'd say he might push very hard to play the guys every week in the interpros, which maybe Leinster, for example, might not do, and Munster maybe might not do with some of their kind of senior guys. So maybe that's the angle there too. So maybe he says you've got 3 out of 4 you can play them. Pick,
Yeah, and in the
it
makes sense, but like I just look, I'm really repeating myself here, but like Nick Timoney didn't play in November, so he should have been like a cold spring and tearing into that.
But he's probably still on the track, and is he in the wider 35? If you pick a squad of 35, Timoney's probably in there.
Is, but like I don't see why he would be subject to the same player management minutes.
Well, maybe he's made to play 3 out of 4 games. Maybe that's the management system.
That could...
3 was always the number they used with us.
Yeah.
If you're playing the 4th week in a row, apparently the chance of you getting injured go like up massively apparently. So maybe he wants to play the guys in the 2 interpros.
How was it communicated to the guys when you were playing? Like, was it like, oh, you only have these amount of minutes, you only have this amount of games you can play? Like,
would the
coach be like telling you guys that, or like who was giving you that information that you only had a certain amount?
I think I can't remember exactly. I think you probably know it along the way, and then the coaches are probably saying, giving you a little bit of information too. I don't remember if it was exactly from just the coaches saying that to you. I think maybe some of the S&C guys might say, look, this is the plan. Possibly, I could be wrong on that now. But,
yeah, I suppose it's been so long now.
And probably Jesus will. No, I think I do remember them kind of at different points saying, look, there'll be, and different coaches did it differently. Sorry, yeah. So I think like Matt O'Connor, for example, was under pressure.
I remember he was
pushing really hard back to get guys playing because he would have come from the English Premiership kind of system, and they would have been playing the guys very, as much as they could there because the clubs had kind of bigger ownership when he was there of the players. So yeah, probably different coaches did it maybe slightly differently.
And just in terms of Ulster and like conceding 61 points, obviously Toulouse are a great team. Dupont was in scintillating form as per usual, but still,
when is he not?
Like and especially conceding 40 points in 40 minutes in the first half, like it was
ugly.
What did you like from their performance? What were you're looking at?
Nothing to take from that. Yeah. Walk away. Don't think about it again. They're brilliant, and at home, like they've got the French thing at home where they play. Every team seems to
play 20%.
20% better at least.
50% in some cases.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to Cass.
Yeah, exactly. So just chalk it up. Move on. They're not there yet. You need to be aware of where you are. I think the players, you'd never say that in the dressing room if you're Richie. You kind of give them, it's a good chance to get them up, roast them, get them ready for this week in Bordeaux and a big performance at home. As I said, they want to be lifting the crowd there. They want people to be coming back to Ravenhill, looking forward to an Interpro in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that's kind of my thinking around that, and I wouldn't overthink it. Put it that way.
Yeah,
but you roast them on the parts they miss tackles and
yeah,
you just go.
It looks so ugly when you see the scoreline, but like Toulouse would do a version of that, or like get close to beating a team like that to most teams in the tournament at home. Like
they definitely would.
There's only like a handful of teams that would go to Toulouse and not actually get a hiding or get close to winning. So it doesn't actually. 61 points looks so bad when written down on the piece of paper, but I agree. Like, the Ulster are not competing with Toulouse at this.
No chance.
So it's like beating Bordeaux, beating Exeter in the new year, and getting into the last 16, and maybe getting one day out there is probably the scope of what they're able to achieve in this tournament.
And you have to ask the question what you really want to achieve. If you're being very pragmatic, and there's a dark tilt on it, but it's also the probably sensible one.
Yeah. There was one other Munster thing I wanted to ask you about, but I got sidetracked onto Ulster slightly prematurely. Craig Casey's performance as well. I thought he played well, and I thought he had a pretty good November as well when he came on with Jack Crowley as well at the end of the Australia game. He really, I thought, increased tempo and did well. He's in an interesting place at the moment. Like Gibson Park's obviously the incumbent. Didn't have a great November, but is still, the starter. But with Conor Murray, as you said, coming to the end of his career, I just thought, Casey considering he's playing with Jack Crowley as well, you know, he's betting in with the potential Ireland out half combination too. So like, I'm going to be watching him over the next couple of weeks as well, heading into the Six Nations.
Yeah, so the question, does he get impacted by Crowley not starting as well? And you kind of go, oh, he's not playing with him at club level. I'm not sure about that. I think, you know, excellent player, really neat and tidy game. I think he's improved. Again, I think we were kind of wondering about him last year, and he kind of plateaued a little bit. We hadn't seen much growth. But no, I think his game's come on in a difficult circumstance in Munster this year. Obviously, the start of the year has been very tricky for them. But yeah, no, I really like what I see from Casey, and I think I think it's great because you wouldn't be worried about bringing him on in a big match in a tight situation. You know, I think his decision making is sound. His passing's excellent.
Some really good ones in the weekend.
Really good ones, yeah. I think I've been really impressed with that, and he looks he looks up for it, doesn't he? He looks up for the fight. I thought that he held that pass. It's looked like a real simple skill, and it kind of is a simple skill. But he timed the pass for the try off the maul really well, just enough to give a guy with pace time to attack a guy. He just held it for half a second. It looks like, I'd even say quarter of a second. You know, because most people are trying to fix the guy perfectly. You know, they're trying to hit him the inside shoulder, make sure he's fully committed, and it ruins the opportunity because either it gets slapped down, the pass is delayed, or whatever it is. It was perfect. He allowed his guy have a proper run at him. It's a really subtle little skill, I think, that some people don't get. It also keeps you alive because he's far enough away from the tackler that he can't tackle Casey. So I thought it was a really nice bit of skill, yeah. So and lots to admire during the game as well. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, so 6-day turnaround for them for Cast on Friday night, which is a massive game because
I think it's huge. It's
a real winnable game. Like that, getting Cast as your away French fixture is the best one you could probably hope for, or maybe Stade Francais as well, you know, one of them. But like, so if they win that, they're in a really good chance. It's basically what they didn't do last year when they had a pretty decent
should have done a way better job last year.
Botched.
Yeah, they had serious injury concerns last year.
No, they did.
They still have a few residual bits from that period of
I think
injuries.
they had double-digit leads in all 4 matches and won one. So
blew it.
Yeah, in the second half. So in the second half,
and you think about the Northampton one as well. Remember the ball off the high ball that bounced.
Yeah.
Kind of things like that. You're going, oh god.
Yeah. So and I saw today like Dave Kilcoyne and Ollie Yeager are back fit for this weekend as well. So getting some back in the front row against a Cast team that are going to be physical. So Friday night, I think they will win on Friday night. I think
big call.
I do. Yeah. I think it was last week I was just saying they're
who knows what to expect though. At home as well, they're tricky. It's a tricky pitch there as well, kind of stodgy.
Did you play there?
Played a few times.
I feel like Leinster and Munster.
We did our Cast stint for like 3 or 4 years as well. We seem to always get them in our group or whatever. But yeah, look, I think it's a funny one, isn't it? It's like I think, you know, how different would the season look if this little period is important for them now. They could turn things around quite quickly if they got a win, you know, against Castaway in the weekend, and they win.
They have Ulster and then they have Leinster at home. Like
I think all winnable. And I think I don't know, you'll know more about this because you're more in the stato than me, but it feels like they get a few guys back during this little period as well, like from a really badly injury hit kind of team.
The 2 guys in the front row as well, like,
but that's massive good.
Has been like kind of really struck down by injuries. Jaeger, since he's arrived, has been pretty similar.
Poor guy, yeah. So yeah, look, I think if they get a few more guys back in. You know, I think, you know, but you know, the coaching staff get another week to train them. I know it sounds like kind of a small thing, but it does help, particularly if they're trying to make some changes that they thought they should have been making when Roundtree was in situ.
Well, it was interesting. Before we came on, I saw our colleague Keane Tracy had an article from the Munster press conference with, you know, Mike Prendergast saying he's applied for the head coaching job and he wants it really. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up getting it, given that your kind of star assistant coach is kind of pushing for it and saying it in the media. If he kind of doesn't get it now, it's kind of like,
yeah, I don't know.
He signed a new 2-year contract, so he's going to be staying, it seems. But it's kind of a funny one if you don't give it to him because he's like, he wants it. He's a good coach, and you're like, actually. So
yeah,
I'm expecting.
You know what? He's very well thought of down there as well. I know just from behind the scenes. Yeah. I think he's quite pally with Paul O'Connell, who always spoke really highly of him. So he's very well regarded down there. I think he's done a good job since he's come in. I think when Munster get their team, it's only been the end of the season the last couple of years, but some of the attacking rugby they play has been really, really great. So you can see the work he's done, so he can point to that. But a head coach role is slightly different, you know, and it brings him away from his strength. So I don't see it being a deal breaker for me if he doesn't get it. I think you'll have to have a good conversation to re-motivate him afterwards and say, look, we do value you. We can see the work you're putting in, but like a head coaching role, like what we want from you now is to is kind of business as usual.
Turbocharge.
We want to be able to rely on that. Like, we're worried about our defence. You know, we've got other things we're kind of worried about. Who's going to be, you know, who's got the vision for us going forward? Who's going to be leading us? We think you might be in the next run, but for the next 2 years.
I agree, because it's funny, like, they've hired Chris Boyd as a consultant for until like the end of January or something like that. Like, I think it would be good to have like an experienced kind of head coach like that, basically Chris Boyd, who's done it before, and let Mike Prendergast run the attack still. Like, he obviously wants to be a head coach. It's a promotion. It's obviously more money. It's a natural step up the ladder. But I agree. Like, I just think he's done such a good job of the attack. I'd be happy for him to stay there if I was a Munster supporter and get.
But he should be happy too. Is probably where I'm going with it as well.
But like,
sorry, he wants the bigger one, but say
it's just natural.
And I think it's fine. No, I sorry, I've no. You want your coaches to want that. Like, you know what I mean? You don't want guys just kind of happy, just kind of trucking along there. I think you want someone who's ambitious, because someone who's ambitious is always looking for ways to improve. Is always looking for. So for me, you know, if he wants it, that's a good thing.
But you know what's something funny? Mike Blair, you know, the scrum-half who's played for Scotland, was the Edinburgh head coach for like 2 seasons. I think at the end of last year or maybe 2 years ago, he said, I actually want to go back to being an assistant. So he stepped down and went to be a backs coach, I think, in somewhere else, because he actually preferred being.
I didn't even know that. Sorry, I should know that.
But he gave a really interesting interview when he was like,
he just wanted to coach.
Yeah, he was like, I actually don't really
the
like
logistics
being,
and all
I
that
just
kind of
don't.
stuff, all that crap,
It's so different. You're dealing with so many different things, whereas he just wanted to coach attack and coach backline, which I can understand to it. Like, you know, if that's what you're really passionate about and that's what you're good at, and you feel you're being pulled in a million different directions. So be interested to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I agree. And like, it's obviously a compelling story, because like, you know, it's just whatever it is about them, they get like massive amounts of kind of interest. You know, there's a really passionate fan base there. They've had a, you know, like, I was going to say they've had a difficult year, but a difficult couple of years.
They haven't really.
But they haven't. They've just won a league. Like, Leinster have actually had a difficult couple of years,
yeah,
if that's the barometer. But no, look, I think people are a little bit worried about where the next Munster kind of crop is coming from. And I think with Leinster, you don't worry about that. You know they're going to be competitive nearly every year. They seem to just have this, you know, really kind of good churn through from the school system. Whereas Munster, you're just seeing a bit of it, I think. But maybe there was a couple of years where you're definitely saying, oh, geez, like, where's the next crop, you know? So, yeah, I think it's important that they keep the guys happy that they want to keep and who are doing a good job for them, you know. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out over the next couple of weeks. For now, Luke, thanks so much for joining me tonight, and thank you all for listening and for watching. We will be back next week with another podcast. In the meantime, you can subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or listen on the Irish Independent website. So until next time, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye.